Well, it looks like Davos is this week, and sorry for missing the last couple of days, but I've decided, that I'm just going to do that from time to time when I've got stuff going on. I'm not going to be putting stuff on YouTube. Not my first priority. But when there's stuff to talk about, like the World Economic Forum live in Davos, Switzerland, we're going to talk about it. I see coming out this funny video of Idris Elba talking about how corporations need to keep fighting climate change. And by itself, is that an important statement? Is Idris Elba a serious person? No, of course not. Is he a powerful person? No. Idris Elba is kind of like Zelensky, a creation of the establishment and of the corporate oligarchy. Does Davos control everything that goes on in the Western world? Is every single person a Davos puppet? Is Klaus Schwab the world emperor of the West, of the EU and the United States? Not quite. But I heard, gosh, who was it? Maybe Robert, no, I don't think it was Barnes. Someone recently called Davos the finance wing of the Western establishment. And I think that's a good way of looking at it. Because the people at Davos, it's not like they're ideological neocons or something like that. I mean, these really are just, this is the corporate West. These are all the business people. These are all the bankers. These are all the folks who couldn't give a damn about things like the environment, who love to come out and virtue signal, and try and perpetuate this myth of woke capital. And so people like Elba or a lot of these politicians who show up at the World Economic Forum, people misinterpret them and think of them as, WEF conspirators, whereas they more so are window dressing. It's the finance bros who really control Davos, and they use this conference as an opportunity to try to ingratiate themselves with the politicians and with the celebrities, to try and indoctrinate them and then send them back out into the world to spread their message. It's kind of like, how you have Mises University at the Humble Mises Institute in Auburn, Alabama. Mises University, it's a one-week sort of seminar or series of seminars in which they try and give college students a crash course in Austrian economics and generally the philosophy and what's the term? Epistemology of people like Ludwig von Mises and Murray Rothbard. And then they take these college students and they turn them back out onto the world, hoping that they've taken something away from this week and that they will be influenced by these ideas and in their capacity as college professors or as business people, they will utilize what they've learned and further the mission of the Mises Institute. The WEF does something similar on a much grander scale, but with much more sinister ends. The goal of the World Economic Forum purely is to increase the power and influence of these giant corporate interests. These are people who, because of the amount of wealth that they've accumulated, they believe that they are masters of the universe. They genuinely believe that they are smarter and better equipped to control the planet and to control humanity. And so they want to take all of this knowledge that they feel they have and impute it upon the most influential people in the world. And so in their minds, they're not just thinking that they're trying to accumulate power for power's sake. They're trying to corrupt these democratically elected politicians and other business people and bring them into their cult. because they genuinely believe that the world will be a much better place if they have more power. And so with that said, there is a lot that goes on at Davos on the public end that is just bullshit. They don't actually believe it. You know, like when they invite cute little celebrities like Idris Elba in to talk about why, you know, corporations need to do more to fight climate change. A lot of these people at Davos, I'm sure, understand that the climate change stuff, at least the way that they talk about it, is nonsense. But they rightfully see the climate change narrative as something that could benefit them in amassing more power. And once they've amassed that power, they can use it to affect what they think are better ends for the planet and for humanity. And so even if they recognize that the climate change stuff doesn't hold a lot of water, they probably still believe deep down that overpopulation is a very big risk. That's something that rich people consistently have been concerned with for centuries, ever since the Industrial Revolution, going back, you know, even before Thomas Malthus. The Malthusians yearn for culling the population of the impoverished. And climate change is a great excuse for it. The climate change ideology essentially says that the entire planet will cease to function and become uninhabitable in a number of years unless we basically limit the human population, kill off millions of people, if not billions, stop reproducing, and then, for those of us that are left, we all go and live in pods in very, very dense city centers, leaving the rest of the planet available to serve as a playground for the top, you know, one millionth of 1%. We're talking about a handful of people that will be allowed to enjoy the natural beauty of the planet. Number probably in the tens of thousands. And the rest of us all being cooped up. That's their mission. In a way, I guess you could say that the WEF, the real power behind the WEF, the real players, not just the people who were brought there as guests, but the leaders and the most powerful corporate interests within the WEF, their goal is to steal the entire planet Earth from the rest of us and put us all in ghettos. And the case that they're making is that this is for our own good. Now, maybe you could say, hey, they're not as bad as a Bond villain. You know, they're not trying to destroy the entire planet. But effectively they are. If they're walling humanity off from the planet, and they're going to take it all for themselves, they might as well blow the whole thing up. What good is the Earth if none of us get to enjoy it? If you look at all their goals, that to me is the common thread. You always see these things about, they're setting targets. Okay, by 2030, half of your land mass of your country needs to be held in preservation land, which means no agriculture. It means no houses. It means probably not even parks. Just no trespassing, fenced off. Nobody's allowed to go there. And the state will criminalize anyone who tries to go there and settle or homestead or even just trespass. And they intend on taking more and more land out of private hands, out of circulation. And I shouldn't say that take it out of private hands. It's going to be in private hands. It's just not going to be in your hands. It's going to be in their hands. Bill Gates will still own his, 300,000 acres. He'll own more than that. So will Klaus. So will, all the rest of them. So will Larry Fink. So will Ray Dalio. You know, look at the emission stuff. What does it all have in common? They're trying to make transportation impossible. They're trying to make it so that we can't leave, so we can't escape, so we can't go across the country and settle new lands. They want it very difficult for people to transport themselves. They want you to be locked in to a very small area, probably on foot. Maybe if you're lucky, you'll get a bicycle. And of course, if you can't transport yourself, if you can't move around, all these big open spaces, they're no good to you anyway. And so it'll just make it that much easier for these folks to come and scoop it up. And if in the name of climate change they get rid of cheap electricity, well, then you're not going to be heating and cooling your big single-family home now, are you? 1,500 to 2,000 square feet. That'd be ridiculous. You'll downsize into 250 square foot pod because that's all you'll be able to afford. You'll have to move into the new cities, into the pods, just like Michael Bloomberg intended. Then these folks can come in, buy up your old neighborhoods, and take them for themselves. Your house will be worthless because nobody will be able to afford to live there. The only people who will be interested buyers are the big money guys. Now, do I think this will all work? No, I still don't think it'll work out for them in the end. And I think I have to believe that to keep myself from, wanting to commit suicide. I mean, because to think that any of this could actually come to pass. But, it's helpful. The more I think about this, the more it makes sense. Because it's hard to put yourself in the mindset of these very bad, terrible, no good people. It's hard to distill what it is they're trying to achieve. But it's essential that we understand what their goals are, or else we'll never actually be able to combat them. If we just try to, counter their arguments, their disingenuous arguments at every step, if we try and make the case, oh no, gas stoves are fine. Oh no, gas cars are fine. Oh no, single-family homes are fine. Oh no, living on a few acres is fine. If you try and debunk one by one all of these things they're throwing at you, you're not getting anywhere. You're on defense. You need to go on offense. We have to figure out what exactly it is they're trying to do, which in this case, I believe they're just trying to grab land. I think that they're trying to get people off of the earth. This is essentially the enclosure movement of the 21st century. For those of you unaware, the enclosure movement was way back in Great Britain when they kicked all the peasants off of the land and sent them to live in slums in the cities. And back then, people didn't get to live in pods. They lived on bunk beds. Each bunk was essentially an entire family, living in places like Birmingham, begging for a day's work at a time. That's because they were evicted from land that they probably should have rightfully owned, through natural law homesteading. But instead, they were peasants, and the lord of the manor, even though their families had been there for hundreds of years, the lord decided, you know what, no, I don't think I'm going to let you graze your sheep here anymore. Get out. You're not welcome here anymore. I'm going to grow cotton or something like that. I think that's what happened. Textile industry, something like that. Oh, no. The enclosure movement was for sheep. I think that was what it was about. I should review my British history. Excuse me. But either way, the end result was the same. It was a land grab. And all the people were sent into these cities. It's why we have cities, essentially. In Britain, that's when city populations exploded. But the Davos elite, I think that they want to go further than any previous generation of elites and completely alienate the peasant class from the earth. They seek to completely liberate us from nature by placing us into these pods, not allowing us to drive out of these dense urban hellscapes to experience the nature and the greenery that we no longer have access to on a daily basis. They want to force us to eat food that's unnatural, unholy. Because at the end of the day, they want to enjoy all the spoils of controlling this planet themselves. They will, in effect, reduce the population down to something that they find to be more sustainable, to use one of their euphemisms, but I would say enjoyable for them. To them, they're paying to go out and to see all of these poor people, out in the wild. They want to put us into ghettos so that the earth will be empty, and then they can go flying around in their private jets. They can go frolicking. They can go on fox hunts. They'll still have servants and things on their stately manners, but the planet will be largely empty as long as they avoid the ghettos. And in time, through maybe forced sterilization or secret sterilization, let's say they could put it in the water supply, something like that, of these ghettos, they will reduce the population of the peasants, making us even more manageable. That, to me, seems to be what they're going for. I mean, Bill Gates says this expressly. Other people do, too. And it really meshes well with the climate change narrative. That's something that they have clung to now for multiple decades. And it's always been tied to the overpopulation myth. So I'm going to keep an eye on Davos with this in mind. I encourage the rest of you to do the same, or if you have an alternate theory of what the grand plan, what the ultimate goal of the World Economic Forum is, I'd be interested in hearing it. So with that said, I will see you folks back here tomorrow.